if you're listening on Spotify, the best way to describe today, I'd say 58, 59 degrees. There's 2 girls right now. They're on it's the field across from field 3, the one with the lights, and they're practicing softball. Mechanics are a little off, but I can't help myself. Swing is off, and the balance is not there. But I want to contain myself and not chime in. It's not my place. But it's encouraging to see people playing in the park. And yeah, I have fond memories. This is where Richie Corbo was my coach, and I learned a lot from Richie Corbo. This is where I was teammates with my friend who passed away in a car accident, my best friend, Randy Rivera, and a lot of great memories. I think that I'm hoping that part of the efforts of doing the developmental gap is to bring back more activity, more baseball to the immediate vicinity. It's something that I wish can happen. I think about everything that I'm trying to accomplish, and if anything, my biggest goal is centered on the present moment. It doesn't matter if you've had a bad experience playing baseball elsewhere, or if you're having a bad day, or if you're having a bad week, or you had a bad game. It's just, how do we get people to focus on the present moment? How do we teach kids to focus on the present moment and have an encourageable, I can't help myself, hold on. You're balanced. I'm a baseball coach. See, you're balanced? This is what you want to do. Look, you know when you dance? All right. Make believe you're dancing, right? And what you want to do is you want to be balanced. Right now, what you're doing is you're 2 in the back. So as the pitch is coming, you want to be like this. But when the pitch is coming, you want to pivot a little towards the back. And as it's coming, then dance this way. You don't want to be sitting here because you're sitting on your back foot, on that back leg. Think of dancing. You know how to dance? Like a little. All right. So all you need to do is dance a little. You want to be here. Look. Bachata, merengue, bachata. You go, then you come, boom, the ball's coming, stay back, and then you bring it. And keep your head quiet. So like this, look. You just want to be balanced, and then you go back, and then merengue. Try that. Don't think too much. You get in trouble when you think in baseball. Just... That's better. You just focus on the balance. You're doing good. Baseball is a game of failure. There you go. Woo! Now we can go home.
Present moment is as deep as you want to go with it. In a baseball setting, it's who's up to the plate, what's the situation. If we're on defense, if I'm on offense, it's when a guy gets on first base, what is this pitcher doing? How can we get to second base? Putting the pressure on the defense with our legs. From a defensive standpoint, which I think is huge for developing players to understand, is, everyone knows how to play catch. Everyone knows how to throw. But do they know where they need to be way before the baseball is put into play? And if they don't know, are they willing to ask? And if they're not willing to ask, it tells you a lot about the player too, but it's also a teaching moment. They've never felt they've never felt courage or the vulnerability to ask the questions, because baseball's a game that, we hear it, baseball's a game of failure. Sometimes asking it feels like I'm failing, but and I tell players all the time, if you have questions, ask. I'm going to ask questions, because this is a game that I don't have it figured out. We don't have it figured out. And I think that that's the beautiful piece about it, is there's always something to continue to learn. And I can tell you, over the course of however many years I played, this is a situation that I've been in a few times, and this is how the result went if I did this. And I got a higher chance to get the guy out if I did that. It all depends on the strength too, because if I'm the cutoff man for, say, one guy in center field, but then that center fielder is now pitching and there's a different center fielder, I might be in a different place depending. And that goes back to being present, like who's where, who's playing third base. If they're playing back, and I'm pitching, I know that I got to get closer to the line or if a ball's bunted because he plays back for the reasons that he plays back, whereas the other third baseman, they play in a little bit. It is a lot. Baseball is a lot, and all of these things have to be communicated, and the mind's got to wrap my head around them in seconds because there's another pitch. And now with the pitch timer, which is great, it makes you get there. You have to get there quicker. We have to get there quicker. And then, stepping off the mound, like the power of the pitcher owning that ball and having the control. I didn't see many kids this weekend step off the mound unless they felt pressure. But it's like sometimes you can step off the mound and take a breath, just like you can call time whenever you don't like the call the umpire made on 0-1 count. Now you're 0-2. Well, take time, take a breath, reset, do what you got to do, and then go back to work. I think that the power of the present is that too. You can call time. It's okay. I didn't see it much. And I think it's baseball. It can be a very complex game. And for people who don't understand it, it's very boring and it's very slow. It is the fastest game that's ever been created. You have to make decisions before things happen. And then when those things happen, you sometimes make that right decision and you still don't get the result that you want. Other game is this way. It's one of these games and you have to communicate. And sometimes the coolest thing I heard all weekend was a player, a little upset about it. And I said, talk to me about it. And all he said was, I could have done this. I could have done that. And I said, no, just tell me what it is. He said, well, I did everything right and I still failed. That's baseball. I said, what you just said is the sentence that every baseball player has to come to grips with and be okay with. But the fact that you did everything right and then you failed, what are you going to do tomorrow? How are you going to come back next pitch? Not next at bat, next pitch, and make the adjustment, because while you did everything you could have done, there's always something you can be better at. And that's not to say like you got to be a perfectionist. I get back to the Derek Jeter references a lot. It's the same mindset. It's that killer instinct of everything went well. And Derek Jeter was amazing at doing everything well, getting the good result, but you never knew. The next at bat, you never knew. It was like he struck out the last at bat. And that was years and years and years of work and tons of good mentorship, I imagine, too. But that's what I try and communicate to players, too. And no one's going to be able to do that quicker than you yourself. The quicker you can get there, whatever it is you got to do. And when you see someone else doing it quicker than you got to ask them, like, what are you doing? I got to do this too. I got to figure out where I got to be when the ball's hit here. It's not coming to me yet. Like, what do you tell yourself? And that creates dialogue. And that's what you want in a dugout. You want people communicating, and then you want people not cheering the teammate on, but you want them to be present and picking up the team when they do something good, to be present with it. I used to be the kind of teammate that if guys weren't locked into the game and a guy did something well, I'd ask him, hey, did you see what happened? And if they didn't know, I kind of knew what kind of teammate they were. I didn't get mad. I just knew, like, hey, did you see what happened? And they're like, no, what happened? How did you get on second? Unless that guy left to go use the restroom or was dealing with something like in their own process, that's okay. But if they didn't know, that told me everything I needed to know about that teammate. They weren't in the game. So when we lost, I knew how they were going to take it. But when we won, I knew how they were going to take it. And I think there comes a time as a player where you have to be asking those questions, because you can be on a team and you can be a leader or you can be a follower. But when you have a team full of leaders, I think that's when good things start to happen.
I have with us today Walter Paller. He is. Let me give you your flowers first. I'll give you some flowers. When I met Walter coaching for youth service. He was a youth service coach. And when it came to pitching, he was one of the most generous, thoughtful coaches and empathetic along the lines of thinking about what the pitcher is going through, and also honest about when he played. And I just want to lead off with that. I always remember a lot of the stuff you did, I stole, because that's what coaches do. The biggest compliment Walter ever paid me, he let me coach his son on his JV team. He entrusted me with coaching Robbie, who's a wonderful, the most easily coachable kid ever. So kudos, Walter. Now let Spotify and let everyone know who doesn't know who you are already.
Okay, so I played a lot of baseball growing up. Played at John Jay High School, won the city championship, 1978, which if you do the math, that makes me very old, and played against the likes of Sean Dunston, John Franco, James Harris, Bobby Reedy, great players in New York City high school baseball. I was more of a cheerleader. I learned all of the youth service songs in Spanish because I didn't pitch very much, but I knew that when I finished playing and in high school, I wanted to continue. So I went to Brooklyn College. They didn't know who I was. I walked into the coach's office. He said, "What position you play?" I said, "Pitcher and first base." He said, "Well, we don't need a first baseman, so you're a pitcher." I was like, "All right, fine." Had a terrible fall season and basically dropped out of school. My coach called me up midwinter and he said, "We want you back. We had some guys leave school. We had a couple of injuries. Come on back." So I decided to go back, and that changed my life. That man's name is Mike Hipsher. He's a father figure to me, and I'm still in touch with him. I went back to school, had a 5-1 record in 49 innings or so, and had the fourth best ERA in the country in Division III. So I was off and running, no turning back. Had a good college career, up and down, trouble throwing strikes, got a little bit of meatheadedness in me, got a little cocky, but I love baseball and I continue to work at it. Played in the ACBL for 2 summers, which is pretty good. Usually those spots are reserved for D1 guys, but I made 2 different teams in consecutive seasons. And then when I finished playing after my college career, continued to play for the Brooklyn Bonnies, played until I was right after my wedding, actually. We had 2 tables of Bonnie teammates at my wedding, all dressed in black and orange. So the story begins sort of with me as a player, but I'm most proud of what I decided to do with my career. I got a chance to coach at Berkeley Carroll. They didn't have a program, it was a club team, and we built that program up to more than being formidable. We were competitive with pretty much anybody in New York City, whether it's public, Catholic, or private, depending on the year. I was able to coach my son at Berkeley Carroll up until 12th grade. Of course, as you mentioned, you coached him in JV. He did win the MVP of the JV league with you as his coach, so you did an outstanding job. We appreciate that. I think the 2 most proud things for me is that people don't really mention me as a player, and I was pretty good, but they talk more about what I've been able to do as a coach. You talked about stealing, but that's really what coaches do. They learn from each other, as you noted. And I've continued on. I was at Berkeley Carroll 28 years, great years, and then moved on to the collegiate school in Manhattan for West Side. I'm fortunate enough, we won the state championship in 2009 with Berkeley Carroll, and then again in 2019 at collegiate. And the other thing I'm most proud of is that my son developed into a really, really good college player at Columbia University. And then he actually is still playing. He can't put the bat down. He's going to play this summer in the Netherlands. He'll be 33 in May, and he's married and still plays baseball. So right now, believe it or not, I retired last year full time from coaching and teaching. And after about 3 months, I got the itch to coach again. I called up Matt Roventini at Poly Prep, who is one of the best coaches in the country, thinking maybe he had a middle school team, a JV assistant position, something that was going to be pretty easy on me, just be there, be around baseball. And they offered me the varsity beat head coaching position. So I ended up taking it. I just got back from Florida for a week with them. I'm completely exhausted, but emotionally so fulfilled with being a part of that program. There's some wonderful kids. Now I know firsthand why that program is one of the best programs in the country. Those kids work so hard every single day, and it's just their natural level. And the coaching there and, the things they do. And don't forget they have great facilities, but, there's a lot of programs that have facilities, but they don't max out the way Poly Prep does. That's where I'm at right now, 66 years old and back in the game. So that was a long, drawn out, that's who I am segment, but hopefully it was worth it.
Walter, you have a lot to offer. So the conversations that we're jumping into first is 2 things: the present moment perspective, to get what your take is on being in the present moment, and the second thing is advice for parents from 10U to 18U. So when you're referring to a certain subgroup, be specific. Like it's, you know this better than me. A 12U parent is having a different conversation than a 14U parent, 16U parent, and so on. But what are, from what you've seen, what are things that hinder development at each particular group would you say?
So I'll start off with like the 9 and 10-year-olds level, even though you said, mostly 10. My mindset in developing hitters was to let them swing and determine their own strike zone. And if we were going to win games, we were going to eventually learn how to win by kids understanding this is a ball, this is a strike. And we know the strike zone's very big, when you're younger, and that's part of the frustration. The parents were another part of the frustration because they wanted to win medals. They wanted to win trophies. They didn't want to see their kids fail to eventually succeed. So some of them bought in, and I'm very fortunate that my son developed an incredible eye at the plate. He has led every team he's ever been on in bases on balls, but as you know, he also hits doubles and home runs. So my theory always was you don't walk because you stand in the batter's box looking for a walk. You walk because the other team is afraid of you. Or you just have a really good eye and you're selective and then you spread it out with 2 strikes. That was, that was one part of what I went through. And then there was the 11, 12. I was coaching with youth service, and the 12-year-olds were all so much bigger than us in our own program, and it was a separate team, but yet we were in the same league with them, so it was almost unfair. We never beat them, but I knew that once my guys reached 12, they were not only going to be physically bigger and stronger, but more prepared to play the game the way I wanted it played, that they should be learning. The pitching aspect, here's the irony, like I wanted to develop kids who could throw fastballs and changeups, but I actually had some parents they had signals from where they were sitting to their kid to throw curveballs. My eyes still work. I know what a curveball looks like. And I would ask the kid, why are you throwing a curve? And the kids usually would tell you the truth. When kids are going to be honest with you if they trust you. So I had to have that conversation. I didn't want kids throwing curveballs. Then eventually, towards the end of that season, it became, all right, we'll throw 3 an inning. We have to use them wisely, like allowance. So I was always trying to be a step ahead of the shenanigans, So we're going to give them what they want, but not as much as, they really want to, in terms of curveballs, stuff like that. Some of those kids went on, nobody ever got hurt pitching for me, including high school. You don't hear that Walter Paller's #1 pitcher needs Tommy John surgery. I haven't had one kid that played for me with me in control of his pitch count and rests and all that other stuff. I would rather put health over performance. And eventually you develop deeper staffs that way by trusting more people. I know you and I have had that conversation multiple times about making sure that you give everyone an opportunity. With Polyprep right now, I have some kids that I've already told you're a 1 to 2 inning reliever. That's going to help them develop. If they're successful, we use them more frequently. That means my starting pitchers don't have to go deeper than the 5th inning. Okay. If you do the math, 5 times 15 is 75. That's a pretty good pitch count for a starting pitcher. And there are rules, obviously, as you know, as a high school coach yourself, you got to stay within a certain number. But my number traditionally has always been a little less than that. The more guys you trust, the more guys you develop, the more kids are going to be able to come through for you over, a long season. So I'm a little bit all over the place, but parents need to understand, let the coaches coach. I'm not afraid to communicate with parents. I always said, you want to have a conversation? I'm totally fine. I will look you in the eye and I'm going to tell you the truth. And you may not always like what you hear, but the one thing you're going to know is that I do have an understanding of, I have a plan. I have a game plan for each kid and for the overall team. So I think that part of it is very important.
I'm asking you more for the people that are listening at home. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How important is practice to you, Walter?
So obviously preseason, we're practicing a lot, working on all the things as a team you need to work on, but having a progressive bullpen plan for each kid and holding them to that. What I'm finding out now is there are so many kids who are working with outside trainers and, a lot of these pitching guys that are preaching velocity, velocity, velocity. Velocity is important. You know that. It can make up for a number of mistakes. But the pitchability factor is something you only learn by doing bullpens and flat work and practicing your craft. And I'm very specific with what I talk to kids about what their repertoire is. Or your fastball, your two-seam fastball, which goes one way, your slider goes the other way, and now you mix in a changeup. If you're a reliever in high school, you don't need 3 pitches. So figure out which one in the bullpen you're going to use, and then you got to tell me, and then we'll get to work together. You were around me when I had Ian Miller, right?
Yes, I remember, Ian.
Okay, so, Ian is the poster boy for being able to execute his pitches anywhere, any spot, add velocity, take off velocity. He ended up pitching at Harvard, Division I, and was a borderline draft pick eventually because he did focus once he got away from me on velo. Ironically, he walked more guys at Harvard than he ever did at Berkeley Carroll. The hitters are different, I understand. But, strikes are strikes at any level. So getting back to the practice thing, specific practice makes perfect, not practice makes perfect.
Right.
Oh, and you have to give each kid a plan based on what, you think they're capable of doing. And I have to say right now, most of the work I did individually in Florida was with the pitchers because we have someone else who works with all of the hitters at Poly Prep. Matt Durando is a wonderful hitting coach. Skip Gordon, as you know, is our player development guy. But I was able to go off with small groups of pitchers 3 or 4 times in the week that I was there. And we worked specifically on pitching. And these kids have the radar gun behind the pitcher that's throwing. I said, give me that. And I put it in my pocket. Because the next thing you see is kids' heads flying off, the ball's up and in, not a competitive pitch, and the radar gun says 83, and they think that's good. Good because that 83 doesn't do any good in terms of helping you win. So there's apples and refrigerators is a term I use. On one hand, you have velo, 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 throw harder, get more spin rate, blah, blah, blah. That's great. We need it, right? If you can't throw strikes and be competitive, you're going to throw 75 pitches in 3 innings. Truthfully, I'm not keeping you out there for 75 through 3 because you're not effective. We're losing that game. So my emphasis is on throw the ball to the big part of the strike zone. And the only way to do that is practice your craft. So I hope that answers your question about practice. I pointed it towards the pitching part, but that goes for hitting too. When you tell kids to go 2-strike mode, even though it's not 2 strikes because they're swinging and missing and, they're hitting pop-ups. I was fortunate enough when I got older to swing a bat in open ball. And I hit 12 home runs, all from the left side. 9 of them were with 2 strikes because I didn't want to strike out. So that was like fear of failure because I wasn't a very good hitter. But you know what? I was a big, strong guy. And if I got closer to the strike zone and made it a 2-strike mode, it worked. And sometimes kids feel that they're too prideful to do that. They want to take the big swing. I'm fine with that early in the count. I let guys swing 3 and more probably than any coach in New York City. But there's a time and a place for everything. So a lot of this is putting your ego aside, whether it's pitching or hitting, and getting out there and try.
I don't know if you remember Francisco from the Gothams when he was coaching over at Trinity. And I watched one of his practices, and what he was doing, that it's something that I've stole. He was doing simulated games, and what he had guys hitting, running, and kids were getting lots and lots of iterations. I noticed that, and I was like, if you can get those types of practices, that's where, that's where I was trying to lead you to. If you can get kids into those types of practice, because in a game, you play a doubleheader, and if it's a well-pitched doubleheader, if you get 7, 8 at bats, or if you're hitting 6 or 7, you may get 6 at bats both games. But if you do practices that are heavy on iterations and you get people involved and people rotating, you can get 15, 20, 25 cuts. You can get enough reps, and it becomes a question of reps. Mind you, in the reps, if you focus on mechanics and technique, yes, for me, and maybe this is somewhere you can help me. The biggest obstacle, and I think I'm getting better with this, is managing attitudes. I understand that I can I can give you drills, I can give you instructions, I can give you things that you can do in high iterations. But how do we I know that there's nothing I can sprinkle on these kids to get the attitude. Where do you see attitude in terms of baseball approach
Okay,
for
so
these
first of
kids?
all, yeah, I mean that's a very important piece. Let me go back to the practice aspect before I answer that though.
Okay.
One of the things I discovered is some of the best ways to get better at baseball is to play baseball. Duh, right? So if you build your practice, I know, right? You build your practice around making two teams, have the coach pitch behind the L screen, and you play two pitch. Hopefully the coach could throw at least one strike in two pitches. All right. And if you throw really badly, give them one extra pitch. But they've got to put the ball in play. And I do a lot of planning on paper. And actually, I don't use paper. I have my notes in my phone. Okay. So I plan the first inning, the second inning, the third inning, and so on until the practice is over or however long we're going to do it. The first inning, we might start off with nobody on base, nobody out. We actually do 6 outs at a time. So you're not constantly changing, running in and out. So the first team gets 3 outs, clear the bases, you get 3 more. After 6 outs, then you switch. The first inning, the first 3 outs, you just play straight baseball. All right. But now, what you have the power to do as a coach, the next time around, you start the inning with bases loaded. Start the inning with man on second, no outs. Start the next inning with man on third, infield in. Right. So now that's how the inning starts, and you keep developing situations, but it's not just practicing it. It's living it. It's doing it, making decisions. You and I both know the decisions you make on the field are really critical in whether you're going to be a good team or not, you're going to be a good player individually. Okay, now I'll go to attitude. Never forget that coach pitch thing, though, because it's like basketball coaches scrimmage a lot and they learn a lot from their players. We've got to create that scenario in practice in baseball as well. And it's easy. You don't have to do a lot of work. You just have to keep coaching and you have your situation. Attitude. I'll tell you what, my wife's kindergarten teacher, the best kindergarten teacher in the world, in my opinion. She and I talk all the time about we treat kids how they deserve to be treated, not the same. Okay, so that's a little bit traditional. I don't use the term old school. That's something I don't use, but it's a traditional approach. And what I tell kids is this: if you want more out of me and I have plenty to give, you've got to show me with your eye contact, with your body language, with how you respond to criticism, and then how you're going to take what I tell you and go do something with it. Some kids, they have the plague. You don't want to be around them because they're very negative, and you don't actually walk away from any kid, but those kids are much harder to work with, and they've got to understand that they're not getting the most out of us and giving themselves a chance by having negative attitude, negative body language. So I think, again, addressing that one to one and saying, listen, I'm not happy with this. I'd like to see you do this. And then giving them a chance. But then the second time around, it's got to be, this is now going to affect your playing time because the guy who's competing with you for playing time, he's as good as you are, and he's getting better through visual learning or communication. My big thing is being able to communicate, right? But I've also learned from my son, who's an amazing hitting coach now, the use of video, whether it's hitting or pitching. I video kids. I got the Meta glasses. Do you have Meta
Really?
glasses, Jose?
No, no,
Get
no,
the
no,
Meta
no.
glasses because you can video or take pictures with it without your phone. Now, your phone's got to
I
be near you.
one of Coach Mateo has the meta glasses. We have a coach. He watches. He's nuts that way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this thing works. It's something you swear by, the videotaping.
Yeah, because you don't have to take your phone out and do the video that way. You just have to ask, "Hey, Meta, video what I'm looking at." And now you get a video of the kid, and then it'll stop when you tell it to stop. And I show it to the kid right there, and you can do slow-mo, which is the best way. With a hitter, where does your bat begin to blur? That tells me your bat speed is starting earlier or too late. And now this is controversial, so everybody sit down and hold on tight. But I have become, over time, talking to my son, learning from him, I've become a teacher man disciple. Not completely, because it's not for everybody. But why don't we mimic the best who's ever done it when it comes to hitting? You know, Alex Rodriguez talks about swinging down on the ball. Do you ever notice that when he talks hitting? Watch his videos. His bat blurs on a circular path to the baseball. So he may think he's doing one thing, but he actually is doing the HLP, high level pattern. So
Okay.
again, I talked to the poly prep coaches about this. Matt Durando, who again is very good at what he does, he's starting to watch videos with me. So it's very interesting. He has a young son who's a really good ball player. And obviously, we all want to teach our kids the correct thing. I joke with Rob Powler and I say, I'm so sorry I taught you the wrong thing growing up because you remember Rob was direct, right? Down level, short
Yes.
arms, right? Very compact. And Rob has
Short to the ball.
incredible hand eye and incredible bat to ball skills. So he said, Dad, what you taught me worked because, frankly, he had talent. When he was on the youth service team, he was never one of the biggest kids, but he hit the ball further than all the big kids because he has bat speed and he uses his core and his legs. And guess what? You know, Rob worked out all the time. By the way, you gave Rob a cone. His first batting tee was a Jose Franco
The little
cone,
one.
construction cone, the orange cone.
The little
So
one. I
we
swear by that
remember
till
that.
this day. Till this day. And the kids looked at me like I have 4 heads. Like I you hit on so many points and how you framed it from the perspective of your wife who's a kindergarten teacher along the lines of it's not a negotiation, it's along the lines it's a conversation between the kid and the adult, and it's what are you putting in, what energy are you putting out, and how your energy impacts me and how I'm reacting to that energy. That's nicely framed. I'm going to steal that too. Uh
Feel free. Jose, you see the full head of hair here? No. This is this shows my experience and going back to many years ago, I obviously didn't know all of this stuff, but I paid attention. I'm an educator first, not just a baseball coach. So knowing what I've learned over the years from great teachers, great coaches, Friday night talks with my wife, you know, after a long week of teaching and coaching, that's how you develop. 40 years is a long time. If you're paying attention, you want to keep getting better, that applies to the kids, but it applies obviously to us too. You have kind of rejuvenated yourself right now in a way, right? You always loved baseball. You were around the game all the time. And then I kind of lost touch with you a little bit. I was like, where's Jose? Where's Waldo? Kind of thing. And all of a sudden, boom, you pop up in a podcast and I see you're coaching high school again. So good
I
to you. Credit to you.
well, I opened up a juice bar. I
Soup
embodied
juice.
a stoop juice. I embodied it. I went through a hippie phase and I was at the juice bar. You only sell smoothies in the summer. And also, you know what? My daughter was in middle school and her middle school was right down where my shop was at, and I was being a parent. I mean, how good of a coach can I be if I don't lead by example? I was invested in my kid. You want to know what's
Mhm.
my claim to fame with my kid? And my kid rolls her eyes. From kindergarten to high school, I drop my kid off at school every day. That's a little helicopter like, but I did drop offs. My wife did pickup. And when my daughter was in middle school, she would just walk over to the juice shop. So for me, don't get me wrong, anybody that came into the juice bar with a baseball bag or anything, I kept them there way too long. Their smoothie got watery because I'm trying to break down their mechanics and everything. It was the best thing for me at the time. But now my kid, she's about to graduate. She's graduating college. Go figure. What happened to us, Walter? We used to be in this park running around. What happened to us? Now,
Jose, I dread trips to the mound right now. It's so far from the dugout to the mound.
Walter,
But, another piece to this is humor. The kids on my varsity B team, we laugh together a lot. I'm constantly joking around, and some of the things like some of my bench jockeying, which I don't say out loud because I'm not a bench jockey guy when it comes to how our dugout's going to comport itself. But I'll say something that they haven't heard, something from way back when, and they're like, My God, that's so funny. Or if we're in the bullpen, I'll ask them obviously a question they know the answer to, but I'm like, so if you know the answer to that, why are you doing this? It's very lighthearted, but there's a path that we can learn, we can cry, we can, smile and laugh and all that stuff. I mean, I'm more motivated right now with what I'm doing, or at least as motivated. You've seen me. I've been tireless. It's what I love to do, but I'm having so much fun right now. And I think the kids see it and we're feeding off of each other.
How do you encourage kids to focus on the present moment? And what are the advice or recommendations you tell your kids along the lines of resetting?
So, wow, I wish, Rob's a psychology major. So he's always been very good at, I mean, I've never seen a player so good at dealing with adversity and success. Rob has my wife's genes, like we call him the flatliner. You hardly ever really get a reaction from him. If you say
Uh-huh.
something controversial, if you show that you're a little bit upset with something, and when he was a young kid, he would sort of just eyeball you and you can see the wheels turning, never an immediate response. Think before you act. He had that at a young age. But all right, let me get back to your question. Uh, there are so many little terms that coaches use that to try to get kids to do that, but a lot of this is your genetic makeup. Some kids really struggle. Here's what I've been telling kids who are emotional. You have to learn to channel that emotion to work for you and not against you. And I'll give you an example. I am not, I don't have any responsibility with the national team at Poly Prep, but what I've done is I go to every practice because we all practice together. And I've gotten to know them in a very, you know, good way. And they trust me now. So there's a young man who is going to Vanderbilt, David Hinojosa, and he is just a wonderful human being and obviously a talented pitcher. He's 92 to 95, good breaking stuff, competitive like an animal. But David is an emotional guy. And I've been trying to get him to calm down between innings, to like breathe, like breathing technique, and to just keep that energy in until you get back out on the mounds and then use it in a direct path for success. And it's a work in progress, I'll tell you. And you know what? Maybe I don't need to mess with him because he's pretty damn good. But I think he could be better if that energy was put into its proper place. So, Jose, there's so many different personalities. David's an
Right.
easy one because who the hell am I? He doesn't have to listen to me. He's gotten to a really good place listening to a lot of people, but he gives me the respect of hearing what I have to say. He's from a wonderful family. They're traditional and it works. So I'm trying to think, I got a couple of guys who get down on themselves quickly. And I truth be told, I don't really know what to tell those guys except that's not working. That's not good for you. How do you feel right now? That is like looking that problem in the mirror. And over time, you've heard the term fake it till you make it, right? You've also heard the
Sure.
term train your brain as another one. And guess what? I'm 66. I'm still training my brain to, if I get up on a Monday morning and it's rainy and my wife goes to work and I'm alone in the house having retired, yes, I know I have baseball in the afternoon, but sometimes you allow negativity to mess up your morning, and thinking positively about the gifts that you have can train your brain because the more mental bench pressing you do, right, the stronger you're going to be in a positive way. And then your mind will not drift to the negative so quickly. It'll go to something positive. If you flood your brain and your thought tank with positivity, which I know you're big on this, if you flood your brain with positivity, then you have a chance to keep that positive attitude. And I'm sure you teach kids about being positive, right?
100%. 100. Not only that, I'm very present moment conscious. This was a game of failure. I don't need you thinking about that error. I don't need you thinking about that pitch I called that they just hit 500 feet. I need, the resets. How I frame it is present moment. What's your take on present moment, having a present moment mindset on the baseball field?
I'll give you a term that I use. The front windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror because you can't do anything about what's behind you, but you can do something about what's in front of you. So that's one that
Yeah.
I use a lot. When you use things like that, I have over the years developed my own verbiage with kids, and I can't even tell you some of it now because it's sort of situational. And when it comes out,
100%.
sometimes I actually say to myself, "Wow, that was really good," But and I say to the kids, I try to say things that you'll never forget. I try to say them in a way that will make you laugh or selfie facing stuff about me, whatever it is, because I always tell them, you can't insult me anymore. I'm too old to be insulted. You know what I mean? I'm never going to be a model. I'm never going to be a bodybuilder anymore. This is who I am. So you can't insult me. So
Right.
being honest and forthright with them, but I think all of that, they just learn that you're a human being and they trust you. But I think it's a maturity thing, and it's sort of like you watch kids grow physically. So you and I have been around, guys. Let's use Dylan. When Dylan was younger, he was big, but he wasn't big, right?
Right. He didn't
And then
fill
when
in yet.
Adam was younger, Adam Ottavino was like one of the smallest kids on my team at Berkeley. And
That's
if
right.
I showed you the team picture when he was a freshman or even a sophomore, he would be one of the last guys you'd say, that guy's going to pitch in the big leagues for, 12 years and make millions of dollars. If you looked at John, obviously, his dad's a big guy, but that doesn't always so you just got to trust the process. Back to the parent thing. Parents freak out when their kids haven't grown yet, and they've just got to let nature take its course. You can't do anything about that. I don't want to hear about growth hormones and all of that stuff. You just have to play the game. And how many guys do we know who were 12, 13, 14, who were so much bigger than everybody else that the game was easy? Then the game levels off for those guys, but the slower development kids who stayed on track and love to work, love to get better, the next thing you know, those guys are getting opportunities in college. So we've seen that a million times.
Yeah, 100%. This is a conversation that needs to be continued. As the season progresses, I'm going to be checking in with you. Hopefully, I'll reach out to Robbie. I would love to get his take on hitting, anything, any suggestions, any constructive pointers. If he's the same kid, he's a generous kid. He's a wonderful kid, thoughtful kid. So,
He's the
Walter,
same man.
thank you. I will next time. You know what I want? I want to have a conversation with both Pedro and you. I want to remind Pedro that you got a hit off of him. I want to stir the pot.
Wait, when did
Remember?
Pedro Borbon Jr.?
Yes,
That's right.
that's right. I want to stir the pot. Because I remember in Florida, you said, "Hey, I think I got." When I was playing was it in Brooklyn? Was it a game in Brooklyn?
Yeah, it was on Diamond 7 in the parade grounds. He was playing for some team wearing a red uniform.
The Chiefs? Was it the Chiefs? Was it
I
the
don't know.
Chiefs?
I was older than him, obviously. I don't know. But
It must have
I
been
got
an open
hits
ball.
off 2 big leaguers. Just goes to show you a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I got a base hit off John Franco when we were playing against each other in the parade grounds when we were both like 19 years old. I
Wow.
was playing for the Bonnies. He was playing for Gil Hodges when they had a team. And then the other one was Pedro. So 2 lefties. Meanwhile, those were righty at bats, and I was bad lefty, but I was even worse righty. Anyways, good memories.
Well, Walter, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. And to be continued, we're going to be running into each other. Have a good season. We just got back from Florida ourselves. And good luck this year. And to a certain extent, if we face each other.
That would be awesome. And I think they say in Spanish, con mucho gusto.